What's up?
And welcome into Fantasy Focus Football.
We are here. What a start.
I guess we're live right
That was
now.
our impression of the Denver Broncos defense yesterday.
That's what it looked like.
Is that what you're going to say?
We were playing.
I was going to go Bears or Broncos. I took a half second to decide which way to go. You beat me to it. So
Again,
good.
comedy podcast, now number 3
right.
on
Yep.
the list.
Rushing it.
Welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. It is Monday, September 25th. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. I am here with Field Yates and Mike Clay. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We got some injury updates. We got Taylor Swift in Kansas City. We had a fullback return a kickoff for a touchdown in Houston.
That was legitimately cool. Fullback / tight end.
Yeah, there was too much going on yesterday. Or I think in a normal week, we would be talking a lot more about it.
Oh, totally. Shout out to you, Andrew Beck.
Yes, sir.
But we have to start with the one game that all of us were the most excited to be able to watch. The Dolphins absolutely crushed the Denver Broncos.
That was unbelievable.
70-20.
You heard that right.
70 points.
This is amazing. 70-20. They win by 50.
I really
they had a
regret
chance
that
to kick a field goal.
He's the only one that would have been able to see any of those other games.
Right.
He would have still been alive when that happened.
Yeah, he actually was there for that 73-point outburst like 62 years ago. There are 4 teams that have not yet played their third game this season. Of the 28 teams that have played so far, 3 games, the Dolphins have more points, had more points yesterday than half of them. 14 of the 28 teams that have played 3 games have not scored a total of 70 points this season. The Dolphins had 70 yesterday.
Unbelievable.
Unreal. And it was all done with their running backs. Here's the thing. Tyreek Hill scored 30 fantasy points. He was the 3rd highest scoring player on the team.
I mean,
it is unreal.
This was a day for the ages. Literally. History.
It really was. And Devon Achane, if you're watching the video,
Hold
you
on.
see.
That's not
Achan.
Achan, we found out.
What?
It has been
Achan.
corrected. He corrected it himself last night
That
to
was
Peter
even
King.
No way. That was in the pronunciation guide.
Correct.
Achane,
Yes. And I don't know how that one wasn't clarified sooner because it feels like he's had ample opportunities. And I kind of feel like this came up at one point. I actually think the great Keith Lipscomb at one point emailed us this summer and made sure that we knew it was Devon Achane. That was the player's preference. Last night he tells Peter King it's Devon Achane. I'm not sure what's more surprising. The fact that Achane went for 4 touchdowns and actually had more fantasy points than Raheem Mostert, who had over 45, or that his last name is now Achane and not Achane.
And not Achane.
This happens sometimes. Speaking of these teams, I think it was Patrick Surtain. For a long time, that's Patrick Surtain, right?
Yeah.
You see that. You see that in hockey a lot, actually. But anyway, Achane, who played, a handful of snaps, and he didn't play at all in week 1. He was healthy scratch. Week 2, he played a little bit at a couple of fantasy points. He's the number 5 scoring fantasy running back this season, not this week.
Yeah,
this season,
just from week 3.
And it was all from week 3.
So let's put some numbers to it because it was utterly ridiculous. 51.3 fantasy points for Devon Achane. He had 4 total touchdowns.
Yep.
He had 18 rushes for 203 yards. Here's what we knew about Achane coming into the NFL. The guy could freaking fly.
Yes.
Freaking fly. Fastest running back in the draft, one of the smallest running backs in the draft, and that was the reason why he dropped to 84th overall, on top of the fact that teams are not drafting running backs as high, other than, I guess, Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs is here. But the point is, the guy can absolutely fly, and he is a perfect fit for the Miami Dolphins. The problem we were wondering about coming into the season was the team has a legitimate investment in Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr., absent injuries, was Achane going to have a real role in this offense? Even on a day in which Mostert scores 4 touchdowns, Achane finds the end zone 4 times as well, with Jeff Wilson Jr. being out, Savon Ahmed being out. All of a sudden, Achane had a real role. Do you think this is something or nothing, Mike, going forward?
This is a tricky one because Achane didn't even lead his backfield in snaps, to your point. Mostert played 51. He played 42% of the snaps. Jeff Wilson, when he comes back, you would expect to have some sort of role here. And this is a hot take. You ready for this one?
No.
Miami will not score 70 points most weeks.
What?
Wow. They will not. In fact, I don't think
point?
they'll
Why do you
score
think Tua?
35 most weeks.
I mean, that would be, it's going to matter of fact. Just scoring 35 would be sweet.
Great teams score like 4 touchdowns a game. That's like, if you average 4 touchdowns, that's like peak New England Patriots,
right?
Like, dynasty. That's 28 points plus a couple of field goals. That's like low 30s.
Right.
Okay, so it's tricky. Like I'm already thinking ahead to this week, like where we're going to rank these guys. And if we have Mostert ahead, he was still the lead back here, and he's playing well. He's the number 1 scoring fantasy running back this season. Where does their 1A or 1B running back file in? Probably as a you can't bench him after this, but he's probably a fringe RB too.
So I mean, I would Mostert. You mean?
Well, no.
I'm sorry. A-Chain. I'm
is
sorry.
probably a fringe RB2 most or more of a fringe RB1 at this
week,
point.
even against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's the other
defense.
thing. Very tough matchup, and they're coming off a dominant win as well.
Right. The question I think that I'm wondering, and again, I'm not saying these are exactly the same thing, but some elements are comparable, is week 1, small sample size, Breece Hall crushes it.
Exactly, yeah.
Comes back over his next 2 games, granted against good defenses, and granted Zach Wilson is the pits as a quarterback, but Breece Hall has been very much kept in check over the past 2 weeks.
Yep.
I guess here's what I would say. This is how far I'm willing to go right now without having processed my week 4 rankings yet with A-Chan, is that absolutely unquestionably should be added in basically every league right now.
Yep.
Because even if the chance of him becoming the guy that ends up leading the running backs and snaps is like 10% for the rest of the season, it's still a worthwhile roll of the dice because this might be the most explosive offense we've seen in probably since the Patrick Mahomes 50 touchdown year back in 2018, right? So
far,
I want as much of this Dolphins offense, unless it's a tight end, as I can get.
Also, both of those 2 running backs, once Jeff Wilson comes back, that are playing in front of him, absolutely continually have injury concerns over and over, year after year.
Yeah.
So you just want to talk about when we look at loading up our end of our bench. Devon Achane, I'm going to do that a bunch.
I know.
Devon Achane is perfect for
Our
that.
Los Angeles Chargers for the rest of this season, right? No, the San Diego Chargers. So I think he's worth adding. I got to I need to process this, but I would say like absolutely unquestionably should be added this week. And what a fun player to watch on a day in which Tua Tagovailoa threw, I think, 2 touchdowns right-handed. He is a lefty, righty, no-look touchdown passes. We're not talking about that. This is a footnote. That's how ridiculous yesterday was. And I know that we've talked about Achane, but dude, shout out Raheem Mostert.
He looks great too.
There is going to be a time where Mostert is not carrying the load as much as he has through the first 3 weeks, but probably the best value in draft so far because even after the news of Jeff Wilson going on IR popped, the fact that he could have been back or will be back probably by week 5, it's not like Mostert catapulted to like, the 3rd round, right? He went 8th, 9th, 10th round, maybe even later pre-Jeff Wilson Jr. news. He's been tremendous. If you have Raheem Mostert, there's a real shot your team is heading towards 3-0 after tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he's the number 1 scoring fantasy running back now.
He was
already decent weeks 1 and 2, and now this. He's I would say he's in that MVP conversation early on. I think we're going to learn a lot in week 4 because, again, we saw Miami start well, then they came back to earth against New England, good defense, and they had this explosive game against Denver, and then maybe back to earth a little bit against Buffalo. But it's on the other side as well. Yeah. We're going to learn a lot about this Denver defense, and if this is a defense we're going to be able to take advantage of all season, they play Chicago.
What happened to that defense? They were good last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, Justin Simmons is out, but still. Sure, I mean, Patrick
he's a
Surtain,
great player. Right.
You have Zach Allen, who is a massive investment up front. Frank Clark, I think, was out for this one. I knew edge rusher would be an issue for them, but still, it doesn't really matter. It's an NFL defense. You should not be giving up 70 points. There's no excuse for what we saw yesterday.
A week after, and the blueprint is way too strong of a characterization because Miami still won the game. But don't you think if you're the Broncos, you'd just say, let me try to figure out exactly what the Patriots did last week, right? It wasn't perfect, but they kept Tyreek Hill relatively in check. Right now, the ground game got them. If you're playing the Dolphins, I know that they just scored 70 points with 8 touchdowns from their running backs yesterday. The calculus needs to be, if they want to ground and pound us and win, we'll take it. Like, good for them, right? Because you cannot hang with them in a track meet through the air. I don't know what the Broncos were thinking yesterday, but what a terrible performance.
I mean, they couldn't stop the run either, though. Yeah. So even if they were,
I guess maybe
they could load the boxes and nothing worked. Nothing worked in this one.
Yeah, but just shout out to the Dolphins and to a terrific,
looked great,
way too over discussed, like just a good football player. Been fantastic this year. Shout out to you, Tua.
I'm going to say this so you guys don't have to. But the Karma Police came real hard for Sean Payton this week.
Yeah.
Might be the worst coached football defense that I have seen all season long. It's been a long time since how many years? Over 70 years since we've seen a team give up 70 points in the NFL.
Yeah, he was not happy after the game either.
This is a team that held the Raiders in check, which it wasn't saying much in week 1. They still lost. It was close. And Washington, they had the big lead and blew it. And Washington went off against them. So this is carried over actually from week 2, these defensive issues.
Also, shout out to, unfortunately, Jalen Waddle. Cannot believe that the Dolphins scored 70 points and he doesn't even get to be a part of this game.
Trade him. He's holding him back.
Unbelievable. All right. We're going to take a break here for a second field. But first, help us out with some Bills.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance and start every Miami Dolphin in fantasy? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, it didn't actually say that part. Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Whatever you're looking forward to this season, I mean, if you're a Broncos fan, probably looking forward to Chicago next week.
The draft?
At this point, yeah.
Oh, NBA season, maybe. Baseball starting up again.
Well, there's one thing that pairs well with every great moment, an ice cold Miller Lite at just 96 calories a can. Miller Lite is the only light beer you'll want to celebrate with all season long. So whether you're at the stadium playing fantasy football or watching the game at home or at the bar, Miller Lite is here to make your football season taste like Miller time. From kickoff till the clock runs out, you can't go wrong with Miller Lite in your hand. It's the only light beer with a taste worthy of our national obsession. Because what's the point of having a beer if it doesn't taste like, beer?
There isn't one.
It's got 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12-ounce serving with a smooth taste and a crisp, clean finish. You get the taste you crave without the calories. So this season, crack open a light beer that hits your taste buds so hard you'll feel it in your heart. Make it Miller time all season long. Get Miller Lite delivered right to your door. Visit MillerLite.com/FFF, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Nice job. Way to close that out.
Crushed it.
Mike, have you ever dreamed of hitting the road in your very own customized Mercedes-Benz Sprinter?
I'm closing my eyes thinking about it now.
Yep. Following college football all season long, hitting all the biggest games in college football's most celebrated stadiums. At ESPN, we dreamed that dream. And with the help of Mercedes-Benz, we made it happen. This year, our very own Jen Latta has teamed up with Mercedes-Benz designers to create a road-ready, full-functional, state-of-the-art podcast studio on wheels. The ride is pure Mercedes-Benz with all-wheel drive and the latest driver assistance safety technology. The podcast studio must be seen and heard to be believed, a spacious and chill conversation space with mics, a camera, mixing board to capture all the action on board. Jen Latta will be interviewing some of the biggest names in college football and points to Mercedes-Benz for always bringing some extra. Out back of the Sprinter, they're innovating, pushing the science of the tailgate complete with a grill, a cooler, TV monitors, and more. This is #VanLife meets the fan life. To get an inside look of this one-of-a-kind, blow-your-mind collaboration and how it came together, visit mbvans.com/sprinterlabs. The Mercedes-Benz ESPN College Football Podcast Sprinter, coming soon to a game near you. All right, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, and Mike Clay back here on Fantasy Focus Football. We are going
off and rolling, no more breaks.
That's right. We are going.
Let's go.
Nonstop.
Full throttle.
We got a bunch of stuff to get through. We're going to start, unfortunately, with a couple of injuries. Derek Carr went down in that game against the Packers. It has been reported to be an AC sprain field.
Yep.
It doesn't sound like this is going to be season ending. We were worried about that, but the timetable for him coming back is a little bit unknown. It seems like we should at least plan for maybe not having him here in week 4.
Yeah, it sounds like we could see a Jameis Winston start in week 4 for the Saints, and obviously sucks to see this for Derek Carr, a guy who had been playing pretty solid football for them so far. They were 2-0 entering week 3. Of course, they blew that 17-point lead yesterday. But for Jameis, I don't know. First of all, we were not starting Derek Carr in one quarterback league, so it's not like you have to find a quarterback replacement, most likely. For Jameis, though, while he is a player that is often discussed and sometimes highly criticized, he's probably one of the, 3 best backups in the entire NFL?
Definitely.
Perfectly capable backup. So I don't think this has a dramatic impact on that Saints offense going forward. I still love Chris Olave, who, despite not finding the end zone, is pacing for over 1,700 receiving yards and about 120 catches this season.
That sounds good.
Seems good. Yeah, he's been nothing short of a star. He's amazing. The Saints offense should be able to continue to move the ball through the air like it has so far, and they get Alvin Kamara back this week.
Yeah, kind of an interesting spot maybe to try to trade for Chris Olave. Very quiet, tremendous season so far. He's 4th in targets, but has 0 touchdowns, and that is kind of making it sneaky, like he's not really performing at that level yet. He absolutely is, and he could finish as a top 5 fantasy receiver this season, plus the Carr injury. Maybe a window here to try and go out and trade for him just a little low. He might be a little undervalued. By the way, Derek Carr, career high average depth of throw. We know Jameis Winston, infamous for being aggressive, throwing it downfield.
Yep.
So we might not see a big change in the offensive scheme here. Maybe more turnovers, unfortunately. That's been a problem for Winston, but otherwise, I'm with you. Should be pretty straightforward.
I love what you just said, Field. No risk it, no risk it. We have our start-sit coin from Trophy Smack right here.
Oh, nice.
And on one side, you can figure out whether you want to start or sit. It says no risk it to get the biscuit on one side. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, pretty good.
I love that.
Check out our friends over at Trophy Smack in case you want to get anything for your fantasy league. They got a bunch of good stuff.
Including a coin flipper. That's awesome.
That's right. Let's also talk about, you guys good with Derek Carr?
Yep,
and the
of course.
Saints offense? All right, let's talk about Mike Williams. Mike Williams looked awesome.
He did. He was having a great
Looked
day
so
yesterday.
good.
Yeah, he's been pretty solid so far this season as well. Unfortunately for Mike Williams, the injury bug bit again yesterday. Knee injury, nothing specific at the time of our chat right now, 11:15 a.m. Eastern time on the East Coast. But the initial prognosis based off reporting did not sound very good here for Mike Williams. Could be an extended absence for him. Keenan Allen absolutely mashed. We'll talk about that game in a second. But Mike, Quentin Johnston, a first-round pick, might be walking into a juicy opportunity.
Yeah, so he's been the 4 so far this season, very clearly. In fact, this was a little concerning for me. And this might not carry forward. Look, if Quentin Johnston's on waivers, you're scooping him up. If Josh Palmer's out there, you're scooping him up. You want both of these guys. Palmer, short-term, probably going to be the 2, Johnston the 3. But this is what concerns me. Right. I said that, I think. Did I not enunciate the T for
Johnston.
you? Johnston. Tons of Johns. All right. Here's the pass routes. Lots of Johns. Get it? Get it?
I got it.
There's a little dad joke stuck it in there. Here's the routes after Mike Williams left the game. Keenan Allen, 9. Josh Palmer, 9. Quentin Johnston, 3. They went to more 12 personnel. Stone Smart was getting routes.
When you say 12 personnel, does that mean that I should be adding Donald Parham?
Maybe. He is. What is he, a top 5 scorer at tight end so far this season? We could see more 12 personnel from the Chargers, something we're not used to. But again, Johnson is a first-round wide receiver. He should absolutely be on your roster. We thought this might be the case anyway. Even with Williams, it might take some time for him to break out. It looks like that's going to be the case regardless. Yeah,
and I always remind people that sometimes a team's in-game adjustment can be different than when they have a full week to prepare for how they're going to account for an injury. So while Johnston did not play as much as Josh Palmer yesterday after the Mike Williams injury, maybe with a full week of prep, when they play the Raiders next week, it's more of Johnston in that Mike Williams.
That might have been a little game script related too, because I think they had the edge down. Like in the fourth quarter, they were up. So even when throwing, they might have been protecting a lead. I'd have to check exactly what the script was, but nonetheless, I would have liked to see 9, 9, and 7 or 9, 9, and 8 in terms of pass routes, but something to think about.
What a game this was, though, Daniel.
It was unbelievable being able to watch. I feel like Justin Herbert, without Austin Eckler back there, is throwing the ball quite a bit more than what we had seen from him. 47 passes in this game, guys. 47. A big part of that for me, Joshua Kelly, done on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
Do you want to pay us off now?
Anyway, let's move on to the next topic. So Justin Herbert, the top scoring fantasy quarterback this season.
He is the top scoring fantasy quarterback. You want to know why? Because he threw 47 times because Joshua Kelly was bad.
Circled right back.
All right, so let's just hit the Joshua Kelly thing one time, and I don't want to yuck it up too hard because these are still humans. But as I told you guys last week, my primary concern with Josh Kelly is I don't think he's very good at football. He keeps getting opportunities and keeps not producing. Yesterday was yet another example as he had 11 carries for 12 yards. He had 2.7 fantasy points yesterday. It turns out I was about 50 spots too high on him, and I was the lowest person amongst all the rankers.
Yeah. In 2 games without Austin Eckler, 24 carries for 51 yards, only 2 targets and 1 catch. That's very disappointing. Not what I expected. The guy was more productive in week 1 with Austin Eckler than he's been 2 weeks combined without him. Is super disappointing. And the irony here is Kelly was a guy I had way down my board coming into the league. Not a fan. I'm surprised he's overachieved my expectations, winning a 2 job in this league, but very discouraging so far. And Isaiah Spiller got more run over Elijah Dotson in this one. I wonder if maybe he starts to push for that 2 job. Something to keep an eye on.
It does sound like, by the way, that Austin Eckler might very well sit out week 4. They have a bye in week 5 or 6 to the Chargers. So it sounds like there's a possibility that Eckler will avoid IR and yet still not play until like possibly week 6 or week 7. Things feel a little goofy right now with that Austin Eckler situation. Like I can't quite put my finger on it. It just feels a little off.
How old is he?
28.
He's 28.
Yikes.
Yeah, no. I'm not talking about. I mean, he can still go. The guy was freaking RB2
No, I know that, but that's
one.
injury. There's a lot of reasons why once you hit that age, that like injuries, ineffectiveness, things start to knock running backs down, and there's a lot of them like that. Aaron Jones, there's another guy. I mean, Derrick Henry. We're gonna get to him. So
shout out Justin Herbert just once more time because he was brilliant. Daniel, I know you noted he's one of 2 quarterbacks that has at least 20 fantasy points in every game this season. The other being
Jordan Love.
Which one of those do you feel like is more sustainable though?
I think that Justin Herbert is probably more sustainable than Jordan Love. We'll talk about Jordan Love very briefly a little bit later on in the show.
But Keenan Allen, dude, how about
Let's
this guy?
talk about this guy.
Oh, my gosh.
Beast. He has been unbelievable. Age, apparently not a factor with him, Mike Clay.
No, and that's something we talked about with him in the offseason, which is if you're going to sustain production into your 30s, it's probably because you're a short-range slot sort of receiver, which he is. I looked this up last night. He had 20 targets and 18 catches in this game. One of 5 players in league history with 20-plus targets and 18-plus catches in a game.
Yep.
5 times that's been done. 2 were Brandon Marshall.
I was just going to say, Brandon Marshall, the only 2 that I know.
Was another, I can't remember who the other one was.
He's also the only player ever
T.O.
with 3 games of 15 more catches.
Yeah, so he's been incredible. He's actually the number 1 scorer in fantasy right now, more than any quarterback, anyone else. Totally crushing it. And this is not new. I should mention this. 10.8 targets per game in 11 games since he came back from that injury in the middle of last season. He's been almost 100 yards per game. The guy is unbelievable.
Yeah, I truly believe the only concern for Keenan Allen coming into the season for anybody was, will he be able to stay healthy for the full 18 games? I don't think anybody would have said, hey, if you told me he was going to play 17 games in over 18 weeks, you'd probably be like, yeah, like borderline top 10 wide receiver, right? He's been better than that, obviously. And with Mike Williams out, it means even more force feeding him the football. And this team can't run the ball without Austin Eckler. So they might be throwing it 47 times again against the Raiders next week.
Kirk Cousins looked exactly like we expected against this Chargers defense. The conversation from me is Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison got points finally for fantasy managers, 17.5 fantasy points. Took a while to get there, though. It was a little tough sledding for Alexander to be able to get there, but at least we got it as a fantasy manager. Are you nervous, though, after this game?
This might be an opportunity to potentially sell high here on Alexander Mattison for a couple of reasons. To your point, it wasn't a particularly efficient effort. 25 touches, 27 opportunities. He had 7 targets, turns into 17.5 fantasy points. There were goal line opportunities they were unable to convert. I still think the offensive line is a problem here. That being said, given how thin running back depth is right now, even if Cam Akers starts to play a little bit of a role, I don't know that giving away Alexander Mattison, unless you can get a capable replacement RB2, is a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, volume is king as long as you're getting volume, and he needs all the volume he can get to be a good RB2 right now. If Akers starts to play a little bit, it could be a problem.
All right, Field Yates, Mike Clay, and Daniel Dopp here on Fantasy Focus. We are diving into the Chiefs. Guys, as long as Taylor Swift is in the building, I'm starting every Chief that there is.
All 22 of them. Starters, offense, and defense. I've been doing as many of this puns as I can. Guys, what a moment. That was electric. Like, I got to say, of all the war room experiences that I've had, yesterday was certainly on the short list of wildest. I got a text yesterday, and I was like, someone texted me, was like, hey, I'm at Arrowhead, and Taylor Swift will be here soon. And I was like, haha, very funny. And he's like, no. Like, you better vet this out.
Yeah, I heard the rumors.
So I texted Shefty, and I was like, you hear about this? And he was like, time to go to work, baby. Adam Shefty
He did tweet about it a lot.
Probably broke about, 17,000 stories in his career. And I was like, I guarantee you, if you break this news, if it's accurate, and of course he found out it's accurate.
It was accurate.
He goes and tweets it, and it got like 8,000 retweets. His tweet was like, Taylor Swift is at the game today.
And that's it.
Yeah.
People were just pumped about it.
What a performance from her.
It was awesome. What a performance from her.
She was great.
Yes, she was great in our fantasy lineup. Seeing her up there with Mama Kelsey being excited with everyone.
Yeah.
It's pretty dope. Let's talk about these Chiefs. Do you guys mind?
This was what we were expecting.
I mean, I'm wearing my Taylor shirt, so I'm ready.
Oh, wow.
This was vintage, right? This was a vintage Kansas City performance. Patrick Mahomes has had just about 20 points per game in his first 2 games of the season, but it was a grind to get there. As a matter of fact, his legs were kind of the saving grace. Yesterday was vintage Patrick Mahomes, 272 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and he barely played in the second half.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce was great. No surprise, he finds the end zone yesterday. Then Jerick McKinnon had to do what Jerick McKinnon does, baby.
Didn't want it.
There's going to be like 4 games this year where he scores over 15 fantasy points, and you're never going to know which games those are.
This is what we expected.
And CEH got a bunch of run in this game, too.
Yeah, he got a lot late.
Yeah.
He got mixed in a little. I looked at this today because I was looking at carry shares and curious about Pacheco going forward.
Was that late in the game because they were worried about...
He got mixed in a little bit, and then late he took it all after they were way out of it. He had like all the carries. They only had 3 active running backs, so somebody had to play. It wasn't going to be McKinnon. So.
I wondered if they did CEH rather than Pacheco because he came in with a Q tag, and rather than let someone who came in a little bit banged up grind it out at the end of the game.
I
if
think
they
it's
gave
because
it to CEH.
Pacheco's their best back.
Their main guy.
They want him healthy. They don't want him grinding games out. Yeah.
Totally. So Pacheco's still the guy that we like here, in spite of the fact that all 3 Chiefs running backs got in the end zone this week.
Definitely.
Sometimes that's just how it works.
No question about it. But the Chiefs, I thought today were like relatively chalky. No wide receiver that's going to consistently matter that we can count on as of right now for the Chiefs. But you've got two absolute megastars, arguably the best at their position. Certainly Kelsey is the best. Mahomes on that very short list with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts and Lamar, et cetera. And then Pacheco, who I think is going to have like quite a few weeks. We've already seen 2 out of 3 where like there's just enough work for everybody else that he's going to be more like a low-end RB3, but he can have days where he ends up as a low-end RB2 like yesterday when he gets the requisite work as a runner.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm comfortable with him as an RB2 most weeks. I think I'll be ranking him like 17th to 19th in an average matchup.
A little lower personally.
Really? Okay, so somewhere in that range. Yeah, I'll say that. Also, to your point on the pass catchers, Travis Kelce, 22% target share this season. No one else is over 12%. Yeah. And then it goes like, if you order the team, I tweeted this last night, it's like 12%, 11%, 10, 9, 8, right? 7, 6, 5. Like it's like right in order because they just spread it around to all these different.
We talked about that in this preseason field. One of the things that we talked about is, do we need to stop trying to make Chiefs wide receivers a thing? Because if you look back at last year, the highest scoring fantasy wide receiver was Juju Smith-Schuster as like a mid wide receiver 30 on the season.
I think there's hope for Sky Moore, maybe Rashee Rice if he starts playing more, to be at least a palatable receiver 3.
There's hope for everyone because they play with Patrick Mahomes. I just need to see it.
Well, Rashee Rice was stopped at like the 1-inch line yesterday on a play that initially was ruled a touchdown that led to a Clyde Edwards-Helaire rushing score. One of the themes for the rest of the show is going to be start or not start, or start or sit, I guess would be another way of putting it.
Love it.
On players. And for the Bears, seriously, like I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I'm just like flat out. If you have Justin Fields as your quarterback, are you benching him this week?
Yes. They're playing Denver, a team that just gave up 10 touchdowns. So I think I'm going to rank him as a starter.
Okay.
He can run a lot. We know that. We've seen that in 2 out of 3 games this season. Yeah. And they're playing Denver, who just gave up 10 touchdowns. They could give up a third. If Denver gives up 3 touchdowns this week instead of 10.
Wait a minute.
We're still having a good Justin Fields.
I got to be honest
with you.
You say
that, but like we just had that game against the Chiefs where they were down by 30, and all he had to do was just run the ball everywhere, and he didn't do it this week. Like if you're not going to do it in a week where
that's a good defense, though. I mean, the Chiefs' defense is pretty good.
Does that make a difference if you're talking about a quarterback being able to break containment and just make plays with his legs?
I mean, he did, right? Didn't he have like 11 carries in this game? What was his stat?
He was like
what was it for 13? So for 13 and a half fantasy points.
He actually ran. He ran a little bit. I mean, that's how he got to. So he had.
So he got to 10.7 fantasy points by running a little bit.
Correct.
That's not going to do it for me, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I know. This is putting aside the analytical hat that Mike wears, and he's the best in the world at this job for many, many reasons, and putting the emotional hat on because you can do a good job of not being emotional. Daniel and I
can't.
I'm a robot.
I'm bad about not being a robot.
No, that's why you're great at what you're the best.
Justin Fields was just complaining about being a robot.
No, I'm serious. Like you're as good as you're better than everybody else at this, but you're like I'm too emotional to have such a pragmatic take that you just did. If I have Justin Fields and I only have him on one team this year, and he is, I have Kirk Cousins. So I guess coming into the season, I thought Kirk Cousins was my quarterback too. Feels like we've made a quick switch there. And until further notice, it'll be Justin Fields on the bench for me. And I'm going to have him outside my top 10 because when you just watch the game, and there were only 3 games in the afternoon slate yesterday, and obviously it was hard not to want to watch this Chiefs game because Taylor Swift was there. Eyeball test is bad. It's really bad. And I just trust, man. It's just hard for me to trust Justin Fields. I hope he goes off for 25 fantasy points next week, and I have assuaged those concerns. But until further notice, I'm going to have a hard time playing him. And same goes for DJ Moore, man, because Justin Fields in this passing offense is a complete wreck right now. A complete and utter wreck.
Yeah, it's tough because DJ Moore has a 29% target share, but it has
them. It has a 40-yard catch that would have been he dropped it,
and he had a garbage time touchdown, which really saved his fantasy day. Otherwise, he would have 2 complete disasters. I'm with you. That target share has some 2022 Falcons vibes to it with London.
It does.
Big target share and an unproductive offense is a concern. Yeah, I'm with you. This is a tough one.
I got quite a few quarterbacks that I would rather start over any Bears, or not just any Bears, but specifically over Justin Fields.
By the way, there's no Bears that I feel great starting right now.
I don't want to start DJ Moore. Don't want to start any of the running backs.
We'll have to touch back on this later in the week. Maybe
definitely. Let's revisit it for sure. But
maybe more bet potential on Justin Fields.
Love it. Okay, I'm in for it. Okay.
Wow.
Let's talk. But there are a lot of quarterbacks you trust more than Justin Fields. Is Deshaun Watson one of them?
I don't know how to feel after this game. Field. Here's the thing. He looked as good as he's looked in a Browns uniform. Yeah. Also left a touchdown on the field on what was the worst officiating call of the game.
Oh my God.
When Amari Amari Cooper
I know.
didn't run out of bounds, but
Crazy.
apparently was called. He ran out of
Yeah, he
bounds.
was like 18 inches away from being on the
Not only do I not know what
sideline.
defensive pass interference anymore, I don't know what
we
the
don't know
sidelines
that
look
for
anymore.
sure. No
like
doubt
that,
about
that was really tough. But I mean, as far as Deshaun Watson,
Yeah.
it's as good as he's looked in a Browns uniform.
It was as good as he's looked in a Browns uniform. It's funny. Even like the plays, the problem is like the plays that aren't good are just so spectacularly bad that you're like, oh my God. Like
You
yesterday.
mean the one he threw the ball back?
Yes, it was a
Oh.
Carson Wentz. Like he's about to get sacked, and rather than just like holding onto the ball and taking a 6-yard loss, he throws the ball the opposite of the line of scrimmage, like backwards towards his own end zone. And fortunately, Elijah Moore grabs it and ends up getting tackled. But still, it was just ridiculous. But here's the encouraging thing, and we were talking about this before the show, the three of us, is that great matchup. I mean, the greatest of matchups for a quarterback right now, and he has a good game. It would have been, and so is that encouraging? Absolutely. Is it enough for me to feel like he has turned the tide and he's figured it out as a thrower? I'm not quite there yet, but I am definitely encouraged by what I saw from Deshaun yesterday.
Yeah, hosting the Ravens this week, so we'll see how that goes for him. I'll tell you what, we talked about this on Fantasy Football Now yesterday morning. I want to see more high percentage throws for Watson instead of just firing it downfield at these out of bounds. And what they do, they came out of the game and manufactured touches for Elijah Moore, who had like a ton of volume right out of the gate. I like that, and that gives me some optimism going forward. He only had 6 incompletions in this game, 27 to 33. I think that's a good sign for going forward. If he can be a high completion rate going forward, and he adds some value with his legs, Watson can hang in there as a back end QB1.
We told you guys coming into this game, if Jerome Ford has a quiet day as a rusher, don't be bothered.
It's okay.
He had 10 carries for 18 yards. That's the bad news. The good news is it was against the Titans. It should get easier. And he found the end zone twice. So it ended up paying off. I could not be more, I'm very bullish on Jerome Ford as an RB2 going forward.
Yeah, I wish I saw him a little bit more out of the gate. There was more Kareem Hunt and
it was a weird
Pierre
start.
Strong than I liked. But I will say this. I looked a little closer at the snaps and the carries. Pierre Strong had 6 carries in this game compared to 10 for Ford. 5 of the final 6 carries of the game. They were protecting a lead. They took Ford out of the game. So I'm with you. I think better days ahead.
Much better days
Start or
ahead.
sit on Derrick Henry going forward.
Better days are ahead on Derrick Henry,
Have
too,
we
right,
reached
Mike?
the point, though?
He was outsnapped again. Second time in 3 games outsnapped. And it was not even close.
38.7% yesterday.
Yeah.
38.7% of the snaps.
And that got closer. Right at the beginning of the game, he was barely even seeing the field. Major concerns. But the edge in snaps so far over the rookie Tajay Spears, 91 to 80. That is not what we expected.
It?
That is close. He's still been decent in fantasy to the point, no top 12s, but he's like hanging in there as an RB2. It's not like we're benching him yet, but definitely something's going on here. This is shocking.
Let's talk about this.
Why is the snap share so low?
Where do you think he ranks in terms of rushing yards so far this season?
Rushing yards.
With
Well, he had the
14
big
to
week
still
one.
have to play. Yep.
He had the big week 1, so I'll say 15th.
I'll say outside the top
All right,
35.
Mike is close, 16th. So, however, and again, tiny sample size, but where do you think he ranks in terms of yards per carry so far this season?
That's got to be low, right?
120th.
Yeah.
3.2 yards per carry for Derrick Henry.
Is this age 29 now for him? That's starting to creep
Wow,
up. I mean,
maybe he's ancient. Yeah, no, I mean it's a weird thing. The offensive line's been dealing with some with an illness. I mean, Peter Skoronski had an appendicitis. He's probably their best offensive lineman,
also
even though he was a rookie.
My
Yeah.
32nd ranked O line coming into this season.
Yep.
Maybe we should
So,
have
some
looked at that
concerns
closer.
there for sure. I think teams are just going to say, you know what, let's go bottle him up. Like bottle up Derrick Henry. And I know that in the past, that's been what they've tried to do. But like, who in the receiving group is scaring you at all?
No, I mean, they're not, but they're also not playing him too. Like, why is there a
yeah,
plan
no,
for him to get outsnapped
that part-
substantially at times by Tajay Spears? He's not playing as much in passing situations. He's getting fewer routes, fewer targets. He's handling most of the carries, which is saving him. But this is a major concern right now.
10-team league. Are you adding Tajay Spears? Available in 85%.
Yeah, I mean, he should
of
already
leagues.
be on benches.
Yeah, he should be on benches for sure.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yep.
So then he's one of the main waiver ads that we have here this week. I don't know who you like. Like, who else do you even consider starting in this Titans offense? Same conversation we had with the Bears, honestly.
I mean,
Like,
still
D-Hop,
Hopkins.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hop is
You
sort of
feel
on that.
you don't feel
radar.
good about it, though.
No, I mean DeAndre Hopkins is not the same player he once was. There's some breaking news
This
for you.
offense is not what
but,
I'm excited
he
about.
He needs to find the end zone.
Yep.
He's not going to find the end zone very often in this offense.
It's going to be really tough. Hopefully, better days are ahead for everybody within this Titans offense. So we'll hopefully wish for better days. All right. Field Yates, Mike Clay, Daniel Dopp here on Fantasy Focus, and let's talk about Lamar Jackson. Looking like the Lamar Jackson that we used to know.
Yeah, we
14 carries, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, also threw the ball 31 times for 202 passing yards, total of 28 fantasy points. Field, this is the Lamar that I was looking for.
Well, I think the weird part is that some people might have said I was looking for the Lamar that could slice you and dice you for 325 through the air and then add 50 rushing yards and a touchdown. This Ravens passing offense no doubt has evolved from last year. And I think there's a very strong case that it's better. I don't know that it's what we expected it to be, though, at this point, right? Because a lot of weapons, and it's not dominant by any stretch. However, Lamar was dominant yesterday because whether it was poor offensive line play or designed runs, 14 rushes for Lamar Jackson. If you told me that coming out of the gate, that's basically a guaranteed start. So he was terrific yesterday, both as a runner and a passer. We saw that. And I guess like my only take on the on this Ravens passing offense, Mike, is that like, do we know that there's a dominant? I think you have to start Mark Andrews because there's so few tight ends, but he's had a slow start to the season by the Mark Andrews standards. Mm-hmm. Is there a must start amongst the pass catchers, though?
I think Zay Flowers is borderline. There's enough volume. He bounced back in the target department yesterday. Big target share again. I think he's at like 33%. Even when OBJ comes back, which could be this week, I still feel like Flowers should be in lineups. There's enough volume there for me. But I will say this: Jackson has, he has 2 top 10 weeks. He's QB6 in fantasy points. It's mostly been rushing because he has 2 out of 3 games with 0 passing touchdowns. So it's not enough just yet. Maybe it'll be better with OBJ back. But remember, this is a team that just scored 19 points and lost at home to the Colts. And actually, the best kicker on the field was not Justin Tucker.
Right.
It was Matt Gay, who
he
won them the game, basically. He was awesome. He had one of the better kicker games you'll see.
By the way, this is great. Like, these are the fantasy things that like either keep you up tonight, or keep you up at night, or you have to laugh at. Yesterday morning, Jay Harris, the great Jay Harris, a Sports Center anchor, asked me, "Hey man, I'm trying to decide between Tua and Lamar Jackson." Oof. And I was like, "Oh, it's a tough one, obviously, but like generally speaking, Lamar's on my like default list. You have him, you start him, even with how brilliant Tua has been." Tua scores 28.36 points yesterday. Lamar finishes with 28.18. So 0.18 apart. My bigger takeaway when someone asks me a question like that is, if he does, I will feel so bad. My bigger takeaway when you have something like that is trade one of those 2 players, right? Sure. You don't need 2 elite quarterbacks. It's good to have a backup quarterback, but if you can get an elite player at a different position from one of those 2, I would consider making that move.
You probably got 2 panicked quarterback managers in a Justin Field manager and a potential Joe Burrow manager that might be able to, you could certainly look at swinging a trade for one of those guys.
Shout out Zack Moss.
Yeah, he was awesome again.
He was awesome. Start of the week last week, and he has been so busy, Mike. Like, I know Jonathan Taylor is eligible to return in not this week, but next, but Zack Moss has earned every bit of that starting role going forward.
Yeah, how many players have more touches over the last 2 weeks?
I'm guessing, I don't know, 2, 3?
1, Tony Pollard. He's
wow.
the only one with more
I would
touches
not have guessed that.
over the last 2 weeks. His 30 carries yesterday for Zack Moss, most by any player in a game this season. Back-to-back top 10 fantasy weeks. We're starting him until Jonathan Taylor comes back, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, by the way, I saw someone tweet about this yesterday. When Taylor's ready to come back in week 4, do not drop Zack Moss because we don't know what's going to happen with Taylor.
Who has any idea?
We don't know. He could get traded at some point still. He could disappear again, hold out. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So Moss should be at least on benches this season.
Last thing on the Colts, if you're playing a deeper league, Josh Downs should be on your radar.
Tons of targets,
and they are playing 3 receivers a ton on the field this season.
Does it bother you that those targets didn't come from the guy who will be the starting quarterback of this team?
No, because he got them when Anthony Richardson was playing, too. He's just good. He's a third-round pick, a lot of pedigree. He was a really good player at North Carolina. Like, he's legit. He's the real deal.
Yeah, their game plan seems to be a lot of short-range targets. We saw that with Richardson as well. Very low average depth to throw. That's their game, and it's Downs, and it's Pittman. Alec Pierce is MVS, basically.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
When we're looking at these Detroit Lions, guys,
2-1 Detroit Lions to be clear.
2-1 Detroit Lions. That's right. We all had big expectations for Jahmyr Gibbs coming into this game, and here's the thing. Volume technically delivered, but it was not the way that I wanted it. This was the weird, old
deliver.
Alvin Kamara used. He had 18 touches.
That's a good call.
He had 18 touches, and they turned him into Alvin Kamara.
The wrong Alvin Kamara.
Yes, not the one that we want.
Right.
They had him running up the middle. They only gave him 1 target in the passing game. Part of me wants to temper expectations a little bit because it still feels like the Lions are trying to figure out, without David Montgomery, how to utilize Jahmyr Gibbs. We had him as a top 10 guy without David Montgomery here. I think the offensive line is severely banged up on the right side. I don't know how much you guys watched. I watched a lot of this game, trust me. We were
Believe it or not, you did,
backup right tackle.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this feeling like I know Jahmyr Gibbs is so much better than this.
Just so you know, the backup right tackle is actually Dan Campbell. So that's
basically, you know what? That actually wouldn't be bad
yesterday. Jahmyr Gibbs, I actually think that for now, as crazy as this sounds, having David Montgomery is a net positive for Jahmyr Gibbs' value because it will lead them to create more of those receiving touches that we saw in weeks 1 and 2. Montgomery was doubtful yesterday, so I don't know that he's a guarantee to play or not play in week 4 on Thursday night, to Daniel's point here. But yeah, I still can't get super disappointed. The result was not great, but if you told me 18 touches for Jahmyr Gibbs,
82 yards,
82 yards, I think you'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, he scores 1 touchdown, we're having a different conversation.
100%,
so I'm not worried about it. He 59% of the snaps. Here's how his touches have gone per game so far: 9 to 14 to 18, trending up. I know Montgomery was out, but still, if Montgomery's out or limited this week, Gibbs should be in that 15 touch range. That's enough to start him.
And he can break one. The dude is special in terms of talent.
That's basically just what we're waiting for, is for him to be able to hit one. Speaking of breaking one, can I talk about really quickly the number 1 receiving yardage tight end in the league? Sam Laporta.
Kelsey, go for it.
Sam Laporta. Tight end 1 in receiving yards.
Baller.
Tight end 2 in targets. Tight end 3 in receptions.
Yeah.
He is the second highest scoring tight end in fantasy football. Sam Laporta is through 3 weeks.
He's trying to prove that rookie tight ends do matter, Mike.
Yeah, 18 catches in 3 games. That's a rookie record for tight ends.
So
really, really impressive from Sam Laporta. And yeah, we don't expect this from rookie tight ends. Maybe the tides are changing in the NFL as these guys get more athletic and better as pass catchers right out of the gate. We do see sometimes wide receivers make an immediate impact. Maybe the way the tight end position has evolved will change that. We've seen Kyle Pitts do it a couple years ago. Pat Freiermuth the second half of his rookie season. Now Laporta. We'll see if anyone else like a Dalton Kincaid, for example, joins these guys. And actually, even Luke Musgrave, fringe tight end 1 at this point.
By the way, beautiful design on that touchdown yesterday with Sam Laporta. Have you ever seen a player more wide open? He said after the game, he was talking to Jared Goff. He was like, dude, I thought I was going to drop the pass. I was so wide open.
I was waiting for it to come down.
Which, by the way, those are sometimes the hardest catches because it feels like, everything slows down to like a crawl and it's like, oh crap, if I drop this,
and there's 11 dudes running at you the other direction.
Right. Kyle Pitts scored 8 whole fantasy points really quickly.
Big day for him, actually.
Does that give you any more faith? I want to move on because I don't know what people are doing. Okay.
9 targets at least, and we did talk about game script maybe helping boost his volume, but the production still didn't come with that. 41 yards in this game. He's still a fringe tight end 1. When a tight end gets 9 targets, they're a fringe tight end 1 at worst, but I'm still worried.
Start or sit Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, any Jets offensive player?
I'm still starting Garrett Wilson. Massive target share. Had a big game week 2.
Yeah.
Rough week 3, but
okay. So let me ask this then. All right, I was going to say, to Daniel's point, are you starting him in your flex? Are you still starting him where are you starting?
Probably
him?
wide receiver 3.
Okay.
I would think rank him as a wide receiver. So I guess in smaller leagues, a flex.
It's tough. How about so it's just tough, man. I know it's been said 6,000 times over the past 24 hours, but the Jets passing offense is an absolute disaster to watch right now. And they play the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football next week. The Chiefs defense is legit.
We still maybe Wednesday, we still need to have this conversation about, is there a path to getting a quarterback for the Jets?
We need to have that conversation because yesterday,
that's important. That's actionable.
Totally. If you saw Robert Saleh's comments yesterday in print, it was like, hey, Zach's still our guy, gives us the best chance to win. If you went and watched the press conference, it was the most hesitant, let me be careful saying what I'm going to say, because if I say the wrong thing, it's more harmful than just saying the generic thing. This Jets offense is in a rut right now in a major way.
I would rather have Mark Sanchez, Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Troy Buck, Tony Romo.
How about Carson Wentz?
Give me all of the people that are out there commentating
for Mike
games
White
right now. Yeah. All right. Field J's Mike Clay, Daniel Dopp here on Fantasy Focus, and we are making our way through the Week 3 recap. Guys.
Can I just say one thing before we move? Because you were talking about the quarterbacks that you would prefer, and you named a bunch of players, many of which are in the media. You also snuck Joe Buck in there.
Yeah, I did. Oh, did I say Joe Buck? I meant Troy Aikman. That's my bad.
Well, no. Did you mean Joe Buck?
I might mean Joe Buck, honestly.
Pretty athletic guy, so wouldn't totally surprise me.
So good. All right. I want to quickly, before we talk about the Jaguars here, Fields, you had what I think was one of my favorite tweets of the weekend. And when we were talking about Justin Jefferson, he left the game for a little bit, and I was confused as to what he left the game with. And then I said, Justin Jefferson, here's the tweet in case you're not watching it. Justin Jefferson was dealing with just craps. Huge sigh of relief as he's now back on the field. Looks like I think you meant
big crap.
cramps.
What can you say?
I think, did you mean cramp?
I mean, hey,
field?
we all have to go to the bathroom sometimes. It's
every
fine.
once
It's
in a while.
normal. It's natural.
Remember DK Metcalf getting carted
Exactly.
off to go
Yes.
poop?
Yeah.
Paul Pierce.
I saw this. I didn't know what was going on. You saw this. I thought, okay, fine.
All right,
You
that
know,
makes
do the
sense.
I have a
bathroom.
couple of things. I don't edit tweets. I hate, first of all, I think it's a lame feature. I hate when all of a sudden someone edits a tweet and then I don't know why Twitter hasn't figured this out, but when I follow someone and they edit a tweet, it reappears on my timeline like four times.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so bizarre.
awful.
So anyways, I don't edit tweets. I quote tweet instead, or I just reply to it and I say my bad. You know why? Because we're not perfect. We are imperfect humans. And to be honest with you, by the time I realized I had screwed up, it had gotten so much engagement. It was so funny for everybody that I was like, whatever.
You should do this more often.
I was like,
Keep
what the
messing up.
heck? Why not? Like, Stefania texted me and, like, of course, so like politely and diplomatically, she was like, "Hi there. You might want to consider editing your tweet." Right?
Oh, that's
Meanwhile,
funny.
my buddies were like, "That's the crappiest tweet I've ever seen from you."
Oh, that's
So,
pretty good.
yeah.
Now,
See,
all right.
I hope that thing like continues to get retweeted for like
For a while.
for eternity, right? It's like 2042, and someone just retweets the Justin Jefferson craps tweet during his Hall of Fame speech. He's like, "Yeah, I want to thank that guy that said I had craps one game."
That would have worked for Ty Schmidt this week too on the McAfee show. In case you saw the McAfee show this week,
Did yes?
there was a big thing on there. Let's talk about the Jaguars here in week 3 as
He
well.
also had cramps, is what you're saying?
He also had cramping.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was a lot of cramping going on there. Second week in a row, I've been disappointed in Trevor Lawrence and these Jaguars.
Mike takes the cake here in a big way. I mean, Mike told us buyer beware on Trevor Lawrence
It's
this
just
week,
boom,
man.
boom bust for sure. But we thought it'd be better. I mean, Houston was missing a huge chunk of their defense, so I didn't expect quite this bad. 3 passing, 0 rushing touchdowns for him this season. His best weekly finish, 8th back in week 1.
Damn.
So maybe this is going to be a thing. But also, Jacksonville just underperforming so far. I understand. We'll get to this in a second. This offense is playing well on the other side with Houston. You should not lose by 20 to the Texans at home. This is a team that made the playoffs last year, won a playoff game. They're supposed to be better than this. Very disappointing.
Very.
I thought there were a lot of disappointments, not the least of which was the Jaguars defense, one of the most popular streaming options this past week. I know we don't talk about streamers all that often on the defensive side of the ball, but what a woeful performance this was against the Texans' backup offensive line, basically except for one player. So terrible. ETN got banged up at one point. Did he come back?
I did not. All I saw
so.
was a goal line vulture from Tanks Bigsby that made me mad.
Yeah, who barely played. Yeah,
Calvin Ridley. Are we talking enough about him right now? What do you make of this?
Yeah, so his target share, 34% week 1. So we think, all right, we nailed this.
Good to go.
Great guy. He's back. He's ready to go. 17% week 2. A little beat up in that game. Down to 10% in this one.
Yeah.
It's going the wrong direction. He did play a season high in snaps in this game too, which is good in some ways that he's on the field 85% of the time, but bad because he played all that. He's clearly healthy enough to play all them snaps and still had 3 catches for 40 yards. So I think it's just a product of the offensive struggles right now.
That's part of it for sure.
Yeah, go
I will
ahead.
say this, because I think CJ Stroud is an appropriate player to tie into this, who was awesome again yesterday. At the end of last college football season, when Ohio State loses to Georgia, the entire defense is going to be NFL players, like 2/3 are going to be first-round picks. You're like, damn, that kid was awesome in that game. CJ Stroud put Ohio State on his back, and they nearly defeated the back-to-back defending champions. If the draft had been held a day later, it'd be like, yeah, CJ Stroud is a legitimate, should be like right there in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick. He goes number 2. Those like months of us overanalyzing it were the only reasons why he was not talked about in a more definitive light. He's been awesome so far this year.
Yeah.
When Calvin Ridley got put it like at the beginning of the offseason, part of my calculus when I was thinking about Ridley was like, he's really good. Hasn't played in over a year. This Jaguars team has a lot of options. Like maybe he'll have dominant weeks, but also maybe there'll be a lot of other players. My mind shifted over the next 3 months. I just thought about it more. And I was like, no, he's the alpha. He'll be the number 1 guy. Like, it's pretty clear. He's a top 15, 18 wide receiver.
And all reports suggested we were on the right track there.
Yeah.
It was because I kept moving him up too.
But it's like, as maybe it's a good reminder that like sometimes your first impression does really count. Yeah. And so maybe I still think Ridley, if I had to choose a Jaguars wide receiver, it's clearly and obviously him. But on a day in which there was not even a Zay Jones available for the Jaguars, 10% target share. So maybe he's more like wide receiver 20 than he is wide receiver 10, which we thought could be the case after week 1.
Yeah, and Houston was down 2 of their top 3 corners, and I believe Shaq Griffin got hurt during this game as well.
It's a disaster right now for Houston, and they won. Super gritty week, and could not be more impressed with C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
Throwing that pill right now, man.
Super impressed. And not just C.J. Stroud, but how about Tank Dell has looked fantastic. I want to give a shout out to our buddy Al Zeidenfeld.
Okay.
Last 2 weeks on Fantasy Football Now
He's on fire.
in his tournament lineup.
On fire.
Al has had Tank Dell in there. He has done incredibly well.
Yeah, he's a
so go
beast.
check him out at smizzle.tv/links if you want to know how much money Al has won over the last 2 weeks. It's a heck of a lot more than I would have assumed. Tank Dell is doing unbelievable things. So definitely go check out Al. Love that guy.
Yeah, Dell, by the way, 11th in fantasy points a receiver now on the season, despite only playing about a half the time back in week 1 when Noah Brown was still healthy. Touchdowns in back-to-back games, has led the Texans in targets in back-to-back games. This is a fantasy starter now.
He was great. He was terrific. Good prospect coming out of Houston. Too small, which was part of the reason why he dropped to the 3rd round. But, man, what a fun player he is to watch. And, again, C.J. Stroud, you are making believers out of people that said, oh, man, the Texans screwed themselves by winning week 18 last year. Brevin Jordan, their tight end, said yesterday, the best thing that ever happened to the Houston Texans was winning that game in week 18. Because if they lose that game, they have the number 1 pick. Don't you think, because of the groupthink that tends to prevail in the draft, they go Bryce Young, who, by the way, Bryce Young could end up being the freaking best quarterback in the NFL. We are so far away from a final definitive statement on either of these players. But maybe the idea, here's the point that I do want to make. The idea that C.J. Stroud was just a consolation prize was probably overstated during the pre-draft process.
Yeah,
That's what I
absolutely.
would say.
I'm with you. He's QB 11 so far this season, back-to-back top 12. So he's entering the streaming conversation. Not a runner so far. We haven't seen that. He's about 35 rushing yards, so that can limit his ceiling. And he's a rookie, right? He's probably going to have some growing pains throughout this season. We'll see. But so far, so great. Looks like a great dynasty hold, and certainly on the streaming radar.
Did you stream over Justin Fields this week? We'll save that for later on in the week.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it.
I don't think so. Not
All
yet.
right. Let's talk about Jordan Love. Fields, you already mentioned it. One of 2 quarterbacks to start the season with at least 20 fantasy points in 3 straight games, and he hasn't even had Christian Watson. Jordan Love, does he need to be rostered for you in a 10-team league?
He's a totally fine backup quarterback option. He has 51 completions this year. Jordan Love is a mobile quarterback. He is not anywhere close to like a Lamar Jackson or any of those guys that use their legs frequently. I don't know how he has back-to-back games of 20-plus fantasy points. Do you, Mike?
No, it feels fluky for sure. I have a hard time. He might turn out to be
for him.
Yeah, he might be a solid quarterback. That doesn't mean he's going to be a great fantasy quarterback. It is kind of hard to believe. I will say this, though. You mentioned the rushing. That's not something we thought he would move the needle on. He did have 9 for 39
carries.
and a touchdown in this game. So if that, I'm not going to say that continues, but something in that vicinity.
I think it's 4 to 5 carries a game.
Yeah, if he adds a little bit with his legs, that's enough to maybe get him into that streaming conversation. But I'm not there yet. Under 260 passing yards in every game, 6.8 yards per attempt is below average. So it's not. The fantasy points aren't really matching up at the play so far. I'm with you. I think he comes back to earth.
Not a starter in a 10 or a 12-team league. But Field, sometimes we talk about 16-team leagues like the War Room. Like that's a perfect spot where if you need a quarterback, I realize that you don't feel good about it, but you want someone that's actually at least going to be out there. You've seen production from
Well,
them.
what's funny in a league that's deep like that, and I think I've talked about this before. I felt like this season in the leagues that I am playing in, more teams drafted a second quarterback.
Yep.
Where in the War Room, if I had to guess, probably 24, 25 of the starting quarterbacks are rostered. There's a few guys that kind of just trickle through the waiver wire, like
Zach Wilson.
I was going to say Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, a couple of those guys that aren't rostered.
Ritter, Mayfield.
Ritter actually was rostered. And
Joshua Dobbs?
Disappointment there. Dobbs, Dobbs a good one, exactly. Baker, another one. Baker might be rostered actually by now. Neither here nor there. The point is that Jordan Love is a totally usable quarterback too in a league like that.
Deeper league, yep.
I still would have to look pretty closely at the matchup if you're like, hey, my quarterback's on a bye. Can I start Jordan Love? I like to see this a little bit more before I feel great about him as a clear-cut fantasy starting quarterback as a backup option.
I don't need to see anything more from Ken Walker.
That was redundant. That was
It was a little bit.
oxymoronic.
I knew what you meant, though.
What I meant was a fill-in starting quarterback. Sorry.
Yes. I don't need to see anything else from Ken Walker.
I'm going to talk about this one.
The dude
Talk
looks
about it, Mike.
unreal. I want to know why they drafted Zach Charbonnet.
Good
Yeah,
sure.
well, I hear
Super
that.
valuable.
I agree with you. Ken Walker's awesome.
He looks great.
Good player. Here's my concern about his fantasy production so far, because he's delivering as a top 5 fantasy running back right now. 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games. He's first in expected touchdowns, so the 4 touchdowns are legit. 16-plus touches in every game. That's the good. Here's the concern. Zach Charbonnet is coming.
Is he?
Right. He is coming. Season low, 49% of the snaps for Ken Walker in this game. The snap edge was 35-31. I checked. Charbonnet was mixed in throughout this game. This wasn't just they were up late and Charbonnet got all the work. He was mixed in throughout this game. Charbonnet, 17 routes, Walker 10. Walker had 3-2 target edge. So the passing volume, we thought, okay, week 1, he had 5 targets. This is good. It's starting to dwindle, and we're seeing more of Charbonnet. Charbonnet also a higher yards per carry so far. My point there is just that he's running the ball well. If this does become what we thought in the offseason and it comes together and they continue to use 2 guys, look, Pete Carroll doesn't care about fantasy. If he likes Charbonnet and he's making plays, he's going to be involved, and that's going to limit Walker's fantasy upside.
Thank you, Field. That was my prognostication. If you really think that Charbonnet is coming on.
Okay, could we do like a 5-second, let's just start to name players that you could potentially trade for?
Yeah, I think he's, okay, sure. I mean, I think he's going to be an RB2, not a top 5 running back like he is right now. Yeah,
so if I offered you Jerome Ford, yes or no?
I would want Walker.
Okay, Walker over Jerome Ford. God, it's tough because there's been such a mess here.
I know, right? We need to sort out our rankings first.
Oh, God. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson or Kenneth Walker.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I would lean toward, that's close because Stevenson's deferring a lot more to Zeke than we thought, and his target share is down. I will give a slight edge to Walker, but that's a close one.
Najee Harris or Ken Walker III?
That's Walker.
Yeah,
Walker.
Yeah.
I'm having
But we are picking guys that are going down the RB2 ranks.
You know why?
Aaron
Because
Jones or Ken Walker III?
Well,
Assuming Jones is available.
He's healthy.
Yeah, see, those are 2 guys I think I'll rank pretty closely.
Okay.
So I will lean towards Walker because Jones isn't healthy.
It's hard to say sell high on Ken Walker III because there aren't many ascending running backs.
Right,
and
that's
if you're
the problem.
trading him away, your depth is going to be compromised pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things I wanted to point out that, this is not like, okay, Walker's just dominate. Like, Charbonnet is involved, and he's trending up, and he's becoming more involved. So just keep expectations in line for Ken Walker.
How about expectations for old man Adam Thielen?
Octogenarian, the first octogenarian to score 31-plus fantasy points in a game ever.
I don't even know what that word is.
I think it means you're in your 80s.
Oh, wow.
I think.
He's 80? I did not know that.
I was not expecting that. Hashtag comedy
Stefania
podcast.
taught me it.
The octogenarian?
Octogenarian. I believe I actually read it in a column about Joe Namath because he recently joined the Octogenarian Club. I'm going to Google this because I might be an idiot.
All right, well, while you do that, I'll talk. Adam Thielen.
Can you add? Should he be added on all rosters?
Absolutely. 6th in fantasy points right now, 25+% target share in back-to-back games. Yesterday, 14 targets, 11 catches, $145, and a touchdown. He had that dud week 1, 20+ fantasy points in his last 2. He's clearly their number 1, regardless of quarterback. Bryce Young was leaning on him. DJ Chark actually scored a touchdown yesterday, but it's still been the Thielen show, even with Andy Dalton. And Dalton might play week 4 as well. I don't think it matters, though. Thielen should be in lineup.
Confirmed that octogenarian means a person who is from 80 to 89 years old. But my favorite part of this is they used it in a sentence, and I don't know how or why they thought this was the reasonable application. The octogenarian is making his TV writing debut.
As an 89-year-old making their TV writing debut.
Well, it could be 81.
I was like 97% sure you were going to make a Matthew joke there.
Oh, man.
I thought that's where you were going.
Dang, I totally whiffed on that.
You really did. All right.
Oh, man. Missed opportunity.
Daniel Dopp, Mike Clay, and Field Yates here on Fantasy Focus, closing this thing out, talking about 2 Monday night football games, guys. We got a couple of them. Eagles versus the Bucs and Rams against the Bengals. What are you looking for in this first game? Let's talk Eagles-Bucs first, Field.
Okay, so the most important story of the night is the second game, which involves a very notable quarterback injury. But for the Eagles-Bucs game, what I'm looking for is specifically on the Eagles side, Ken Gainwell and DeAndre Swift both available tonight. What will the splits be like between these two? Could this be the Gainwell show again as it was in week 1? Or will Swift take over as was the case in week 2? Or they're going to split it right down the middle like Mad Dog with his entertainment choices. All of a sudden you have 2 guys who end up being like RB29 as opposed to RB9.
Yeah, I agree. It's the Eagles backfield. But which is the better Swift-Kelsey combo? Is it the Eagles one or is it the Chiefs one?
Ooh, you should tweet that tonight. If Swift goes off and like has a touchdown run right behind Jason Kelsey, you better have that one. Have it in the holster. It's Taylor and Travis.
I think it's Taylor and Travis, though. I agree.
I'm very biased.
2 things I'm looking at in this game really quickly. I think A.J. Brown has been a squeaky wheel that's going to get more targets. I'm just curious how that's going to look in this offense. And at the same time with the Bucs, I've seen Mike Evans look really good so far. I want to see him keep looking good, but I want to get more Chris Godwin involved.
Yeah, I want to see my best friend Rashad White do well.
That's right. There you go.
There you go.
My buddy.
Yeah.
Like that. All right, let's talk about this second game because this is really where it's at. Joe Burrow. We do not know yet. We're going to have to keep waiting until what time would you think we will know if Joe Burrow is going to roll tonight?
Well, we're guaranteed that it'll be at the latest 6:45 p.m. Eastern time, 90 minutes before kickoff. There's a chance we'll have some reporting by then. I certainly hope so. Here's the good news, though, is that we talked about this a million times on Fantasy Football Now yesterday. Mm-hmm. You had to plant your flag on Sunday or Monday. Well, Sunday is behind us. Yep. And if you didn't plant your flag, the options are very narrow now, and you need to have a backup. If all three of these players are available, still, I would prefer Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield, Jake Browning is the three options if Joe Burrow is unavailable. I think you guys both see it the same way. If Joe Burrow plays, obviously you are playing him. So I will ask you the next question that people are asking, Mike, because again, they've probably already cast their die and decided I'm either playing Jamar Chase and T. Higgins or I'm not. What is your outlook for them? How optimistic are you if Joe Burrow sits?
I will lower them if Burrow is out. But you're still starting them, right?
Yeah. But how much though, right? Like I think there are people that are, we've seen like the backup quarterback. I mean, not the same thing, but I mean, Garrett Wilson without, and again, they've been some good cornerbacks, but like Garrett Wilson without Aaron Rodgers is fringy.
I think the only situation where it's up for grabs is if you're staring at like, okay, I have T. Higgins or Chris Godwin as options. Like, then you have to be in a really shallow league for that to be the case. So most likely, to your point, you probably planted your flag. T. Higgins is in your lineup. You're not benching Chase no matter what. Higgins is more palatable of a bench in a shallow league.
Right.
But again, what are the odds you have a guy that's playing tonight that's a better option? It's probably slim to none. So I think you just go forward with essentially the core three in Cincinnati. You're starting Chase, Higgins, and Joe Mixon. The rest should be on benches.
That makes it so difficult because at this point, especially with it being Monday night, like you're saying, you're not replacing any of those guys with somebody that you're not replacing Jamar Chase, right? First off, the entire week is already played.
Yeah, it's already been done.
It's already been done. So you don't even really have an option. And even if it is, as much as it sucks, it's like, what are you going to do here? If he's still going to get, and I don't know this, we got to see what it's going to look like with potentially Jake Browning under center.
Yep.
What kind of target share does it look like? Does it really look as bad as Zach Wilson? Or is there a chance that he can come in and be Joshua Dobbs maybe? And Joshua Dobbs isn't great, but like Joshua Dobbs is able to at least get
He's never completed the pass before.
Dobbs gave Hollywood Brown a little bit of value. He gave Rondale Moore some value. So like if we can just
respect to the Cardinals,
something like that.
We need a fantasy flex option where we can enforce a flex to move this game. Like this week, we're going to move this game up to Sunday so we could have made our decisions.
That's
fantasy flex options.
Yeah.
We get that for the industry.
You think the NFL would prefer to have the Dolphins and Bills on Sunday night as opposed to the Chiefs and Jets next week?
Oh my gosh.
Maybe just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted, before we end the show, I did want to say, like, I am continuing to think about Justin Jefferson. I think a little Pepto goes a long way. It's not that big of a deal. If things are really bad, you can take some Imodium. That tends to do the trick as well. Yeah.
Oh, you seem experienced in this department.
I have two young kids, so we have a lot of
cramps.
Yeah, a lot of craps in our house.
All right, let's pick these two games. Eagles at Bucks. I'm going to take the Eagles. Mike, who are you taking here?
Shocker, I'll take the Eagles.
Make it a clean sweep. Give me the Eagles as well.
All right. Other way with the Rams versus the Bengals. Are you taking the upstart Rams?
I am taking the upstart Rams.
Really? And the Bengals are 0-2, right? They're not going 0-3. Either way, they're winning.
I love it. You have a very Lee Corso definitive stance to your picks. I love it.
Which is weird because I'm all probability based.
He's an octogenarian as well. He's an octogenarian.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
That's right.
You are. I don't know what you call someone in their 50s. I'm not. That was mean.
That was
a massive joke. I don't even look like I'm in my 50s.
You look like you're in
a little
20s,
bit of salt and pepper.
No, I look like I'm pushing 40, I think.
I'm going to also take, guys, in case you're wondering, I'm going to take the Rams.
I was wondering. Okay,
yeah.
Rams.
I'm with you on this one. Give me Matthew Stafford. I still love me some Matthew
Stafford.
Stafford.
If Burrow's out, the Rams certainly the favorite.
Wow, look at that hedger.
They're the favorite, but you took the Bengals, so that's what you have. That's how it works.
Let's go.
You know what, guys? As usual, the show was not fun at all.
Never fun doing stuff with you guys.
Plummeting down the comedy charts.
What?
It's so great being able to do this with you guys.
Well, you know what the problem is? The writer strike is over. So some of those writers that were doing podcasts instead, actually, this gives us a chance.
That's right.
I'm happy that the writer strike is over. We might go up to the top because they're going to have to go back to their normal job of being writers and not podcasters.
Hey, check in with us tomorrow. We love you guys. Can't wait to see you on Tuesday. Good luck with Monday Night Football. That's it, guys. That was a really good show. I mean, Fields, you had a really good show.
You say that after every show. Do you mean it?
That was a really good show?
Yeah, you always
No, I don't say that after every show.
Oh,
Usually
really?
on Mondays, Thursdays, and
I want honest
Fridays.
feedback. Could you just be like, you know what, you suck today? I would like to hear that.
You didn't-
Sometimes. I need to be put in my place.
I don't think you-
humbled.
I think you should leave.
I like constructive criticism.
Did I see? I think you should. Did I see Tim Robinson at the Lions game
At the
yesterday?
Lions game, it was so
How do we
good.
not talk about that? Dang it.